Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Earlier in the week, I promised you guys that I would keep y'all as updated as possible with this Oregon running backs coach search. And we got some news coming out early Saturday morning as Rashad Samples is kind of emerging as the top target for this Oregon running backs coach opening. Want to dive into Rashad Samples, talk about what he could bring to this Oregon running backs coach and to this Oregon coaching staff. And I'll start with this. I am a massive fan of Rashad Samples and what he could bring to Oregon. Earlier in the week, we talked about some qualities that Dan Lanning would be looking for in their next running backs coach. It started with talent acquisition. It started with, can these guys get it done on the recruiting trail? Rashad Samples, there's not many better recruiters across the country than Rashad Samples, specifically in the state of Texas, a guy that only 29 years old, a phenomenal resume as a coach, the youngest position coach ever in the NFL with the LA Rams in the 2022 year. Think this would be a phenomenal hire. Want to dive into Rashad Samples. Before we do it, as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. A massive shout out, as always, to the Oregon Duck fans. Y'all continue to show a ton of support, a ton of love to the boys, whether we're talking this program on the recruiting trail, in the transfer portal. Cannot thank you guys enough for rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into Rashad Samples. And what I want to start with is the value that he brings on the recruiting trail, specifically in the state of Texas. You start pulling some coaches, talk about, all right, who are the elite recruiters in the state of Texas? Rashad Samples is going to be at the top of the list. He's from Dallas, Texas, has spent time at Houston, Texas, SMU, and TCU. Not many coaches that are more familiar with the area of Texas. And when you talk about Oregon on the recruiting trail, you know they're going to dominate the West Coast, right? This is one of the most attractive programs on the West Coast. They get top talent from California and throughout that West Coast, but Dan Lanning knows what it takes to win at the highest level. We talk about this all the time. Dan Lanning, being a part of Nick Saban and Kirby Smart's staff, he's learned from the best. He knows what it looks like to compete at the highest level, and it starts with talent acquisition. And you look at Oregon and you look at what they want to do on the recruiting trail. Yes, we want to clean up the West Coast, but we want to recruit nationally. And you look at what they've done in the state of Texas, bringing in guys like Austin Novosad, Aaron Flowers, Johnny Bowens. Adding Rashad Samples to this coaching staff is going to really expedite what they can do in the state of Texas on the recruiting trail. We all know that is one of the most talented states in the country for high school talent. Dan Lanning wants to continue to take top talent from Texas and bring it to Eugene. Rashad Samples is going to be that guy. You take just a quick peek on what he's done on the recruiting trail, and I'll kind of prerequisite with this. This Oregon program has way more kind of pull on the recruiting trail than other spots that he's been. But you scroll down the list, I mean, 4-star Jordan Hudson, loaded with 4-star guys that he's brought to either TCU or SMU. He has shown that he can recruit at programs like Arizona State, like SMU, like TCU. If he can recruit at those programs, he's certainly going to be able to recruit with this Oregon program. So on the recruiting trail, I mean, I don't know if you could find a better hire than Rashad Samples. And then you start talking about, all right, what is he as a coach in the player development department? Rashad Samples, very, very strong resume. And this is a guy that when you start evaluating coaches, you want to see, are they going in the right direction in their coaching career? I don't know if this guy that's rising faster than Rashad Samples, right? Again, the youngest coach ever as a position coach in the NFL, but a guy that started at Houston as a GA, moved to Texas, SMU running backs coach, then goes to Arizona State. This is a guy that is going in the right direction, and you don't go in the right direction as fast as Rashad Samples has been going if you're not an elite player developer as well. There are some questions about, I read the message boards on Twitter. There are some questions that, why is Oregon hiring a wide receivers coach to come coach at Oregon as a running backs coach? Rashad Samples has cut his teeth as a running backs coach, right? Was the running backs coach for the LA Rams, was the running backs coach for SMU. That's probably where he's most comfortable. But something that I want to add is having a coach that has a lot of experience at a lot of different places on the offensive side of the football. That's what you want, right? This is a guy that is a passing game coordinator currently for Arizona State. So you talk about developing running backs not only as ball carriers, but guys who can operate out of the backfield. You feel pretty good about what Rashad Samples can do with the talent in this Oregon running back room. And I'll say this, when I saw this potential hire, I kind of thought of Alik Terry, the Oregon offensive line coach, who is, for my money, one of the best in the game. Young coach that is exploding up the coaching hierarchy. I think Rashad Samples, Alik Terry kind of cut from the same tree in terms of how fast they are moving up this coaching industry. I'm a massive fan of Rashad Samples. And one of the other things that I saw on the message board that I probably would push back on is, oh, we're hiring a guy that is probably going to be leaving this Oregon Ducks program in the next couple of years. That's probably true. He's probably going to be an offensive coordinator in the next 5 years, but that's how you want your programs to look. You go look at Kirby Smart or Nick Saban, kind of the gold standard of college football. Nick Saban would have position coaches for 2 to 3 years, and then they go get hired as offensive coordinators and then head coaches. You look at the coaching tree of Nick Saban, it is extremely impressive. It's a sign that you're not making the good hires if your position coaches are not getting outside interest from other programs. So yes, is Rashad Samples going to be the Oregon running back coach in 2030? Probably not, but that's probably a good sign. And it's probably because he's done a great job at Oregon, and then he gets an offensive coordinator look and potentially even a head coach. This is a guy that's probably going to be a head coach in the next 15, 20 years. This is a guy that is trending in the right direction. So if I'm an Oregon fan, I'm not necessarily upset about a guy that's not going to be there that long, because that means you're making the right hires. And when you kind of get that, you get that idea where if you come to Oregon, you're going to elevate your coaching career. That's how you get the best talent, right? How was Nick Saban able to hire some of the best coaches offseason after offseason? It's because those coaches knew if they go to Alabama, they are going to increase their potential and odds to kind of move up their coaching hierarchy. And I think Dan Lanning in this Oregon program is a coaching staff that guys want to hitch their wagon to and use as a program to kind of expedite their coaching career. Rashad Samples, I think a very, very exciting hire for Oregon. We'll see if it gets done and is official over the next couple of days, but wanted to hop on, talk to you guys a little bit about Rashad Samples. Appreciate y'all rocking with the fellas. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.